All right, folks, here we go. We're going to get started with section 4. So here's the focus question you should take notes on, and we'll go from there. So, Europeans discovered the Americas only because they were interested in finding a sea route to India, China, and the islands of the East Indies, which had long been the basis of a lucrative land-based trade in silk, tea, spices, porcelain, and other luxury goods. In the early 15th century, a large Chinese naval expedition intended to show China's power went all the way to East Africa and could have gone farther west to the Americas, but the Chinese were uninterested in establishing a maritime empire. The Portuguese, benefiting from new sailing and navigation techniques, first explored the Atlantic by making their way down the western coast of Africa. Sailing in recently developed ships called caravels that were capable of long-distance travel, they encountered powerful African kingdoms as they made their way south. Along the way, they also began establishing small colonies on islands in the Atlantic off the African coast, the first sugar plantations based on slavery in the Atlantic world. Furthermore, sailors hoped to find the African source of the gold trade that had provided Europe with most of its supply of the precious metal. By 1498, the Portuguese had explored the Indian coast, and they soon established a maritime empire with trading outposts throughout Africa, India, southern China, and Indonesia. Until 1434, Europeans had never seen the coast of sub-Saharan Africa, including the forest kingdoms south of Mali that were the source of the gold trade. A Portuguese ship that returned with a sprig of rosemary from West Africa proved that the trip could be made. By 1485, the Portuguese reached Benin and began establishing fortified trading posts called factories, in reference to the merchants there who were called factors. That trade activity inspired other European nations to follow soon thereafter. In addition to outposts on the continent, the Portuguese colonized many of the islands off the coast, where they established sugar plantations worked by enslaved natives and Africans. Columbus was a seasoned Mediterranean and North Atlantic sailor from Genoa who, despite popular belief, knew the earth was round, yet he underestimated its size. Europeans were unaware of the massive American continent between Europe and Asia. Brief Viking travels to North America had been forgotten in all but Norse legend shortly after their outposts were abandoned. Columbus was motivated by religious and economic motives. He hoped to convert Asian peoples to Christianity and renew European efforts to retake Jerusalem from Muslim control. Though he had trouble gaining financial support for his travels, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of the newly united Spain decided to back his venture after completion of the Reconquista, in which Moors were driven from Spain. He sailed with royal letters granting permission to make trade agreements with Asian rulers and endorsements from bankers and merchants, all of whom desired to circumvent Muslim trade monopolies with the East. After only 33 days at sea, on October 12, 1492, Columbus arrived at the Bahamas. The exact landing site continues to be disputed, but was most likely San Salvador. He soon went on to Hispaniola, which is now Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and Cuba. He brought 10 natives, whom he called Indians, back to Spain for conversion to Christianity. The next year saw Columbus return with more ships and men and marked the beginnings of Spanish colonization of the New World. Another Italian explorer, Amerigo Vespucci, explored the coast of South America between 1499 and 1502, clearly demonstrating the discovery of a new continent, which would come to bear his name. Vespucci realized that the inhabitants were not residents of the East Indies, but the name Indians has endured to the present day. A host of explorers and fishermen from other European nations, including England, France, and Portugal, soon came to the Americas. John Cabot, a Genoese merchant who had settled in England, reached Newfoundland in 1497, and Pedro Cabral claimed Brazil for Portugal in 1500. But Spanish conquistadors such as Hernan Cortes and Francisco Pizarro took the lead in conquering the Americas, including large native civilizations in South America, for national glory, wealth, and Catholicism, devastating these cultures through warfare and primarily disease exposure, thus laying the basis for the gold and silver mines that would enrich the Spanish crown. In 1513, Vasco Núñez del Balboa became the first to cross Panama and see the Pacific Ocean. Ferdinand Magellan led the first expedition around the globe, encountering islands in the Pacific previously unknown to Europeans. The transatlantic flow of goods and people mixed millions of years of separate evolution, throwing together plants, animals, and cultures. This Columbian exchange transformed both Europe and the Americas. But the impact of war, enslavement, and especially diseases introduced by the Europeans was a demographic disaster for the native peoples of the New World, whose population fell dramatically. Although native people attempted to curb the spread of illness through the use of quarantines, nursing, and other tactics, in the 150 years since European contact, as many as 80 million Indians, which was nearly one-fifth of humankind at that time, perished. So, that's the end of our question there, or this section, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Okay.